Mark, he also said at one time that he prayed that George Zimmerman had the courage to get on the witness stand. What's your reaction to that?
You know, I guess it's okay to say it after the fact. We all know that the client's decision not to take a stand is one of the most revered rights that you have in a criminal trial. And George exercised it not because he was afraid to speak. If he was afraid to speak, he would have, lawyered up the first time that an officer talked to him. George did what he thought was right in talking to the officers. Every time they asked him a question, every reenactment they wanted to do, he passed a CVSA, so we know he was telling the truth in that context. But it was a decision at the trial level that was a strategy decision. And I've said so before. I would only counsel my client in this case to consider taking the stand if I thought the state had proven their case and that George, by his testimony, had to counter something. The state never proved their case because they never had a case, and there was no reason to expose him to the vitriol that is now apparent coming from Ms. Corey afterwards. Why take that risk when there was no purpose in it?
Now, it's interesting that you say that you counseled him, because I was in the courtroom and it seemed to me, Mark, that he wanted to take the witness stand. Is that accurate? Was my read accurate of that?
You're right on. He wanted to tell that jury what he did, why he did it, and what the position that he was put in, why he had to react that way that he reacted. He really did want to talk and want to give his side of the story. But, you and I know, Sonny, as trial attorneys, that the consideration of putting a client on the stand is one you have to be very careful about, because you can do more harm than good. And in a case where it was so weak to begin with, it was just a strategy decision of not taking the chance or the risk. Had he not ever given statements, he would have testified without question. But with 6 statements already before the jury, courtesy of the state, there was just no reason to do anything else.
It's interesting you just mentioned that courtesy of the state, because many people are now, of course, Monday night quarterbacking, but saying, why did the state do that? Had the state not put those statements in, would George Zimmerman have testified?
I think if they had not put the statements in, that we would have had George testify. I haven't said that before, but I think that without his statements, then he did need to tell the jury his story as to why he did what he did. I mean, with self-defense, you have to look at it, and it has to be an affirmative belief that you're in reasonable fear of great bodily injury. That's got to come from George's mouth, maybe from the circumstances, but since it came from his mouth on 6 different statements and it was out there, the state decided to put them in for whatever reason, but it certainly made our decision a lot easier.
And very quickly, where is George Zimmerman now? Have you spoken to him? What is his reaction to the reaction of the verdict?
Well, he's still in hiding. He's still very worried. He is surprised that people didn't listen to the trial and understand that he did act in self-defense. I was a bit concerned or surprised, because I would have thought that people would have listened more. But unfortunately, people who have made up their minds about this case one way or the other are not going to change their mind because of the facts of the case. They already have their opinions set, and unfortunately, it leads to more divide rather than less between